Hello, hello, hello. Today I want to talk to you about acceptance, and I am bringing Fika back. So grab yourself a cup and come and join me. So, for the people who have been here on my channel for a little while, I just wanted to do like a little quick message or a little bit of update because I've been absent for a while, so I wanted to explain a little bit because I started this idea of Fika with Ezra, but I made it very complicated, and I went to the spot high up in the forest here, so it was like a hike of an hour to get there, and then set everything up, and then because it was so long, I wanted to do these really long episodes that were like about an hour long, and then I had to take everything, come back home, so it would take just like most of the day almost to just get it filmed. And of course, that wasn't very sustainable for a very long time because things got busier and I had a lot of other things on my plate. But I did really want to get back into making a little bit of a longer form content where I can just explain things, because people who know me a little bit know that I like to talk, and just making the reels and making everything so short, it's just like more tricky. So I wanted to do something where I can just, speak freely and just explain things. Um, but make it as least possible. What am I saying? Make it as less complex, least complex as possible, to make it very easy so that I can just keep it up and make sure every week a video comes up. But then I also really like the idea of doing Fika. So now we're just, bringing both of them together. Hopefully I can always have a cup with me wherever I am, because I just want to be able to do it wherever I am when I feel inspired to share something with you. And for those completely new, Fika is basically the Swedish concept, which is usually a little bit more elaborate, of having a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, or something warm with something sweet. But since we're making it shorter, we're just gonna hold it with a cup of the beverage of whatever you prefer, and we're gonna leave the cake and the sweets besides. It's just gonna be this like cozy little moment together, where we can drink a cup and hopefully learn something. Because yeah, today, like I said, I really want to talk to you guys about the concept of acceptance, because it has come up so often in the last weeks, where I spoke a lot with clients, even with colleagues of mine, and the topic just keeps coming up, and it seems to be so misunderstood and misused. And so, since there seems to be so much confusion around what it is and what it isn't, I thought I'd make a video to hopefully bring a bit of clarity to it. So, let's see, where should we start? Well, one of the most common misunderstandings that has somehow gotten attached to the idea of acceptance is approval. And because that somehow got entangled within our mind somehow, a lot of people get offended when you will tell them that they need to accept something. Because in their mind, it means that they didn't also approve of that thing that happened that they have to accept. Or in case they were really harmed or hurt, um, they think it means that they approve of whatever that person did to them, that they approve about like what happened, that they approve about the person and what they were doing. But it actually means none of that. It really doesn't mean none of that, because all that it really means is the reality is that it happened. And I can hate it as much as I want. I can disapprove as much as I want, but it doesn't change the reality. I have to accept that this is the reality, that I can't turn back the clock, and this is where I am now after this has happened. And that's all that means. And if we can start by making that clear for ourselves and not entangling it in a lie, saying that it means something that it doesn't, I think that will help us move forward a lot. And it will make it easier for a lot of people to actually find acceptance, because of course, if something horrible happened to you and someone did something horrible to you, of course you don't want to approve of that. But acceptance does not mean that you approve. It just means that you are taking your power back by standing firmly in reality, because you cannot change your reality unless you're actually in it. So acceptance is what will help you come back to reality, even though if you don't like that reality per se after, where this unfortunate thing has brought you. But if we want to get out of this reality and create a better reality for ourselves, we first really have to step into this reality in order for us to be able to make any change working towards a better reality for ourselves. So that's number one. Also, I made some notes. So if you see me going down here, because I thought it was so important that I don't skip out on a lot of things, because I had so many thoughts, I actually wrote some of them down. Okay. So the next thing that I think is very, very important for you to understand is you can't pretend, or you can't rush into acceptance. It has to be real. And for us to get to a real place of acceptance, that means that that place of acceptance has to come from a place of active neutrality, from a place of presence, from a place of being okay with what is now. And for us to be able to get to that place, that means we have to work through a lot of layers of things that most people will refuse to face. Like a lot of negative emotions, a lot of uncomfortable emotions, hard emotions, whatever you want to name them, all of those things that we don't want to feel, we're going to have to feel through them for us to be able to get to that place of acceptance. And the thing is, because most people don't want to do that, we go into some kind of a fake acceptance or pretend acceptance that is very much actually a passive aggressive coping strategy, where we kind of use this idea of acceptance as a shield to actually not really accept, where we kind of go like either using it as an excuse to not really change the circumstances, to tolerate bad behavior, or to really ignore actual problems. And all of that because, we have to accept what is. And so, because then we say we have to accept what is, we kind of not say it, but often mean it, that also holds the secret message of that means I can change it. So I'm just accepting it and staying completely passive to whatever it is that I'm accepting, which is not the point of acceptance. The point of acceptance is to step into it so that then we can actually change it. And another one that you will very often see is then falling into victim mentality, where we again go into this like, I accept, but I can't do anything about it. Well, we couldn't do anything about it in the past. We can change the past, although through shadow work, we can do a lot of healing from the past. But we cannot really undo the past completely ever. but it doesn't mean you can't change your future. Because if we're staying stuck in this past, that trajectory of our future will be a very different trajectory than if we can come into a place of neutrality, of real acceptance, where we can empower ourselves to actually change the direction and make sure that we end up in a future that is much better than where we are at right now. So, how can you recognize whether you're in one or the other, right? Because that's the tricky part, because we all have our blind spots, we all can get emotional, and there's nothing wrong with that. But how can we try to be as conscious about it as we possibly can, right? Well, if we're blaming others still, instead of taking our power back and making a plan on how we can really move forward, and what action we can actually take from that place, then we're probably still not in full acceptance. As long as we're pointing the finger to other people, we're saying, well, I can't get what I want or what I need or what I desire because of someone else. And so you're giving your power away. We're not in an empowered state. We're probably not in real acceptance. And so, let's see. Yeah, acceptance is a really embodied state. And if we want to know if we, are really embodying it and not just knowing it, then it's really important that we pay a lot of attention to ourselves and to our own behavior, because especially with people who consider themselves very spiritual, it's quite easy often to notice where that spirituality comes with quite a bit of a spiritual ego, a kind of spiritual superiority, where they have learned that this is the right way to do it, that we should accept it, that's the right way to do it, so they want to be doing the right thing, but from an ego kind of perspective. And because of that, when you're talking to them in a space where they're like very put together and they're then preaching the right thing, right? And they're like, yes, I've come to understand, I have to take responsibility, I have to accept, I had a part in that as well, it was my choice to be in that situation as well. But then if you catch them in a little bit of a different situation where they're not really paying so much attention and not really controlling themselves so much, and like more talking freely, and somehow conversations about the past come up that pertain to this, then you can very easily catch them really going back into the blaming of the other person, and so on and so on. So those are really things that you want to watch out for. Also know that they're very human, so don't go judging yourself for it, but just become conscious of it and just take it, and then, okay, this is what I'm doing. Accept it. And then, do your best to do better. It's even a thing for acceptance to be able to use it as a manipulation. And I'll be the person that always says all tools are neutral, and it's really how they are used. And a lot of things work, but what actually do we do? What is the actual result on the deeper level, rather than the symptom that we want to kind of get rid of? You see this very often in the working with horses. There was this whole movement more into natural horsemanship, because we didn't want to physically abuse horses anymore. And a lot of people got, oh, you can't, like, those are so nice animals, you can't hit them, like that's way too rough, you see how sensitive they are, right? And so there was this whole movement into natural horsemanship, which is beautiful, which came from a place of trying to understand the horse better, but that also like holds the trap where you're starting to see things, that ways that you can interact with horses that have a deep impact without being physically abusive to them. But then if you're not very conscious about what that actually does and how that actually impacts, then you can very easily end up in manipulation. And that kind of mental manipulation is very often much more damaging and harder to reverse than, let's say, any kind of physical hardness that you would put on that animal. And so actually I had a client who told me a story from how he had tried to treat himself in the past, like what a therapist or like a person he was working with actually advised him. And basically this person, he was suffering from anxiety. And so his therapist or helper, I don't know exactly who this person was, advised him to go into radical acceptance. And so he did that, and he kind of got into radical acceptance of this anxiety, but really with the purpose of getting rid of it. So every time it would come, it was like, I'm accepting this. But in his acceptance, he was also kind of ignoring it. He was like, I know it's here. I accept that it's here. And other than that, I kind of am choosing to completely ignore it. And it worked. Like I said, the anxiety, it went away. But if we then took a look at like what's deeper going on, there is like an inner child part that is seeking help, that is seeking attention to get help. And it manifests in our life as a form of anxiety. And it wasn't like trying to be bad, it was just looking for a way to get attention and help. And if you then practice this, radical acceptance, which is basically say, I can hear you screaming, but I'm going to ignore you anyways. And it's a strategy that's quite often used with children and in real life as well. And if we're not very careful, because there are times when it can be appropriate, but I would say more often than not, it is not, because most unwanted behavior comes from a deeper cause, and they're just seeking attention in the best way they know how, even if they don't really understand what is happening. So this is just something to be really, really careful about. And what's the consequence? Yes, the anxiety actually went away, but other symptoms started to manifest because, of course, if this part starts to understand, well, this is not going to work, I shouldn't do this anymore. It's not like it goes like I shouldn't do anything anymore. It just goes like, okay, this doesn't work. Let me try something else. So when you're doing it from a perspective to get rid of something or just to fix a symptom, you can be actually quite hurting yourself because you're actually fighting against yourself. And that's where the real acceptance comes in, is where we actually start fighting. Sorry. It's where we actually stop fighting against what's actually there and just be with it and hold space for it and find a way to work through it and give it all the time that it needs so that we can actually solve it. And I had just someone the other day write me, and it's someone I've worked with for a long time, and someone who went to all my programs and worked with me one-on-one for a long time, and still he like bumped into this thing that he couldn't get over. Like it was like really stopping him from moving forward in his life. There was like a lot of physical resistance, even in the form of like a lot of constriction in the chest, making it hard to breathe. And I hadn't heard in a while. And then I got this message saying, well, I don't know what I did. I didn't really do anything. But yeah, it was just like all this anger was coming up. And I don't know, I couldn't think of anything. I just, let it be there. And I just went on with my life. And now all of a sudden it's gone and I didn't do anything. Well, actually, you finally did it. You finally, surrendered. You stopped fighting. You stopped holding the space for what is actually there. And if you can do that, and it took weeks, so not many people are willing to allow that for weeks. We want it in an hour and it should be gone, but it sometimes just takes this much time. And when it doesn't fix immediately, we think we're doing something wrong, when it's not like an instant, oh, now like it's magically solved. Then we think there must be it mustn't be working. And none of that is the case. The real acceptance is in trusting yourself and knowing that you will move through it, as long as you're holding the space and allowing everything to be there, and accept that it's going to take as long as it's going to take. So I hope that helps if you've ever struggled with the concept of acceptance. It's just been things that, yeah, have been popping up a lot around us lately, in my sphere. So I'm assuming it's a subject that has been popping up for a lot of people, and it is more complex to understand than you would think at first glance. So I hope this helps you to understand it more fully, to allow yourself to navigate these things with more grace and to actually find more acceptance. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to drink the rest of my cup and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye, guys.